Well, the Code of Conduct is really an easy to follow guide for businesses and for consumers, and really restates a lot of what the existing consumer law is, and adds business practices, best business practices for other areas of law which are not specifically covered for. And it really allows businesses and consumers to understand consumer rights and how best to meet their obligations in relation to any issues that may arise which are consumer related.
So for business owners and retailers, a guide of what they should be doing, and for consumers as well, a document which allows them to know what their rights are.
Yes, the codes are aimed at businesses, and we would urge all retailers of goods to become acquainted with them, and they will really give you guidance as to what is contained within our legislation and best practice guidance beyond that. But certainly for consumers, if they become acquainted with it, it will empower them to know what their rights are, and how the OFT certainly expect businesses to treat a consumer in the event that there are any issues, for example, faulty goods or any other consumer matter that may arise.
Okay, so we can't go through the whole thing because it's quite extensive, but can you give us some examples of what of things that businesses, retailers should be aware of?
Yes, as you say, it's very, very broad, and it touches upon many of the more common complaints that the office receives on a regular basis. And we've tried to keep it quite practical in the approach so it's easy to understand. But for instance, there are best practice guidance with regard to how businesses should treat consumers who are making claims that goods that have been bought are faulty, and the type of redress that they should be offering should the goods in fact be faulty. And there's, for example, an easy to follow schedule with a flow chart as to what the type of redress that may be offered to consumers in any given circumstance.
What's available for you in terms of enforcement? How can these regulations be followed up if the Code of Conduct is breached?
Well, the codes are not legislation per se, so there are no specific repercussions for breaching the code. However, the Office of Fair Trading will regard any departure which is unreasonable from the codes as a significant harm to consumers, and that in turn allows us to take action under the Fair Trading Act.
And I understand that a lot of the bullet points here are actually based in law as well.
Yes, the majority of what is stated in the code is contained in other pieces of legislation. So these are rights which are or obligations rather that businesses already have to follow in law, but they're just being condensed and written in more plain language so that it's easier to understand, plus a few other additions in regards to the more common queries that we get, not only from consumers in terms of complaints, but we get a lot of calls from businesses wanting some guidance as to what they should be doing in certain circumstances. So we've collected the most common queries and we've included them in what we think are easy to follow guidance notes, and rather in the code.